Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fixing Football podcast. Today is episode 121 of the now double or two-time, it's probably the best way of putting it, is it? Two-time, not double, that'd be same year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Two-time nominated finalists of the FCA Awards, which is FCA Awards, but it'd be FC Award, but FCA Awards. Nominated this year for Best International Podcast, Scott. Congratulations. I know we said this last week, but I thought we'd mention it again, as we will do every year and every week until the awards in November. How are you today, Scott?
Yeah, I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. Proud to be part of, as you said, a back-to-back award-nominated podcast. Who'd have thought when this got started 120 weeks ago that this is where we'd be, getting recognised globally for our work?
Exactly. The dream of Martin, who is not here with us today. So you've got me hosting, and I think this is the lineup people want, Scott. This is what they want, you know. And talking about the things that matter, which today, the thing that seems to matter most in the world at the moment, and something that I think gets under your skin more than anything else, is the concept of bomb squads.
Yeah.
So the new idea of players not favoured by their manager and relegated to the aforementioned named bomb squad. So, Scott, let's kick off then, because Chelsea seems synonymous with this idea now. And it seems like it's an ever-growing and list of players that enter this thing. So what is a bomb squad, Scott?
The bomb squad. It is interesting that you say that about Chelsea being synonymous, because I think bomb squad is the first time I heard the actual term bomb squad being used in like 22, 23 or whatever it was. But yeah, for the uninitiated, the bomb squad is effectively a group of players who seemingly have no future with and are then kept separate from the first team. So we're talking training on your own or with the kids or with it just within the bomb squad themselves. And no fraternizing with the main first team players. So using different facilities, coming into the training ground at different times. So you're effectively ostracized from the rest of the group. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Okay. That is right. So what players are in the current Chelsea bomb squad group, would you say? Who are the current alumni of the Chelsea bomb squad?
Yeah, it's an illustrious alumni that we've got. I mean, this year it's actually can a squad be two people? I don't know what the correct definition is of a squad, but it seems a bit light. But this year in particular, Raheem Sterling and Axel Disasi are the two who are unfortunately in the bomb squad. There were more earlier in the window. You had the likes of Carney Chukwuemeka was in the bomb squad. Ben Chilwell has been there for about 2 years. The poor lad, he can't seem to get out of there. So we've had a few, and then you look over the course of the last few seasons. I feel like had he not got a move, Madueke might have been in there as well. You tend to find that if a player if the current Chelsea manager or the directors, whoever it may be, have decided that a player isn't up to scratch, they kind of just get cast off to the side, and the media loves it. The media's had a lovely field day with this, and I think, like I said, Chelsea, I think is the first time I heard the bomb squad term. But I don't think it's necessarily just us that are the culprits. I think there are a few teams who are guilty of casting players aside and leaving them to the wolves.
Yeah, interesting. I think Ben Chilwell, to me, he's like the sort of Harvey Elliott England under 21 of the of the Chelsea bomb squad, isn't he? Just like the absolute main mon of it. So yeah, and I mean, to be fair, there's an argument he's still bomb squad, really, by going to Strasbourg, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
But fair enough. And so you're quite right. I think I agree with you in the sense that this seems to have been coined with Chelsea maybe a couple of years ago. That's somewhere you almost decided that actually we don't want the ready-made. You moved on to this weird strategy that no one's really figured out yet about younger players and resale value. That sort of somewhere you shifted away from that. Yeah. Sort of Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell being good examples of that. But is it new? Did Chelsea invent it, Scott? I think you mentioned there's been other examples, but is this a new idea of the squad element of it?
I think you could argue that the bomb squad is a somewhat new concept, but when in reality, what it really boils down to is you've got players who aren't really rated by the club anymore for reasons that may be true, may not be true. There may be loads of different reasons why this happens. But are Chelsea the first club to ever look at a player or group of players and go, we don't fancy this guy anymore? The answer to that is no. The concept of players being, I guess it depends on historically, have we always seen said players be excluded away from the rest of the first team? I think there probably are a lot of examples of that. We've maybe just not had this terminology for it before, which is why maybe it's getting a lot more column inches than it ever used to, because we've now got a name for this thing that never used to need a name. So I don't think it's necessarily a new thing. I think we've seen examples. I think you can even go back. I mean, you could almost argue Mikel Arteta may have been one of the early architects of this when he was, you think about his treatment of the likes of Ozil and Aubameyang, not allowed in the training ground and all the rest of it. It's kind of the same concept, but it just didn't have this same name. And I feel like it's almost like the media have invented this term for it, and it's kind of now used to sensationalize what I think is quite a normal thing for a relationship between player and club to run its course. Be like, okay, we need to find you a new solution. I could think of a few examples. I think if we think back far enough, the two of us, we could probably think of a few from way back when where it just fizzles out. And you then need to come up with something. Somewhat like the player needs a new club needs to get the wages off the books. And I can't see how we can say it's a new thing.
Yeah, I think we can have a look at examples in a minute, but I think there's quite a few interesting things that you've come across there, because obviously Chelsea haven't invented not wanting a player anymore. That has happened before. So they've not invented this concept, but I think what I disagree with a little bit is this idea that it's been created by the media, because now you're the Chelsea expert here, Scott. I'm just a man who just watches football occasionally. But if I remember rightly, I think Chelsea made a point of almost describing this squad of players that were they almost went public with this idea in a way of almost they wanted to get these off the wage bill. They weren't too concerned about making a loss on them transfer fees, which I think is where the interesting idea of whether this is a good idea or not comes in, and we'll come to that later. But I will put it to them. I do think Chelsea invented the concept of going public with this. Do you think that's fair?
Maybe at least not stopping it from going public. I think maybe fair.
Okay.
I think maybe seeing that certain journalists are running with narratives and just going, okay, fine, whatever. If that serves the purpose of Chelsea Football Club, then whatever, why not? So I do think that, like you touched on something there about whether it's a good idea. And I think that plays a part. Does it being known to the wider football world that this player or group of players surplus to requirements, they're available for someone to come and pick up, does that serve the overall agenda of Chelsea Football Club or whoever's doing this? And I guess you'll have examples of it working out really well. We got the likes of Koulibaly off the wage bill, very, very sharpish, and he was on big money. We've had the likes, Chilwell is now, he's not really, he's technically at Strasbourg, but he's technically off the books, and he was another big earner. But then for every two of those, you've got a 325 grand a week hole in Raheem Sterling, who you can't shift because you've then made it so known that he's not wanted. Then why would anybody else want him? So it's an interesting one when you start to. There's winners and losers in this game, I think.
Well, I personally think there's only really losers. Just Chelsea can get them off the wage books, but none of these represent good business, because there is essentially a PSR loss element to pretty much all of these transfers.
Yeah,
I think Raheem Sterling's an interesting one, and we'll sort of diverge a little bit on Raheem Sterling. I think because I think this is quite an interesting one, because I think everyone with hindsight looks at that transfer and goes, "It's a bad transfer." But I don't think anyone thought that at the time. Was it 25 million-ish you picked him up for?
It was a bit more than that. It was about 40. But this is...
quite a bit more than that, then.
Yeah, quite a bit more. But you think this is a Raheem Sterling that was, at the time, 27?
Yeah. It was... We're talking an elite player. He was a
massive
key part of, in my opinion, the best version of Manchester City. Not the treble-winning one. I think the one prior to that was better. Just the treble we want to go over the line because... Well, other teams were weaker, in my view.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I agree.
But I think he was a key part of the best City side. So I don't think you were signing a bad player. I think most would agree with that. But
Agreed.
it's not worked out. He's had loans that haven't worked out either.
Yeah.
He's in the bomb squad. He's had options to go to Saudi, like Koulibaly. Doesn't want that move. And that's fine. He's allowed to say no to it. But it almost... Is this where it becomes a bit more difficult, really, with this? Is it fair on Raheem Sterling to exclude him because he won't go to Saudi?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is because I was reading an interesting article with oh God, his name has just escaped me. He was a former Newcastle player. His name will come back to me, and he had a similar situation where he was in the bomb squad, and while he was injured, Newcastle signed like Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes and a few key midfield players who are still in the squad today, and he then came back. By the time he recovered from his injury, there was no room for him anymore. And he said that it made more sense for him to train with the under-23s than it did the main squad. Because if you have a main squad of 23 players and you run an 11v11, where do you go? Like, where you can't play. There's almost no point in you being there anyway. So I think, and also I think it can come down to the individual. I don't think Raheem Sterling strikes me as any kind of a troublemaker as such. I don't get any murmurs of like a bad attitude or anything like that. But you can also argue there's some times where maybe a player who is disgruntled and wants to leave, is that the kind of energy that you want around the first team players who you need to be 100% focused on the goal at hand for the season? I'd argue that that could do more harm than good if he's in the ear of other players. He's Raheem Sterling, his Premier League legend.
I absolutely think it would do more harm than good to Chelsea to have. I mean, obviously, you don't want any bad vibes. I know we like that word. You don't want any bad vibes around the gaff, do you? No one likes that. Stinking the gaff out. So no one likes that. But is it fair to Raheem Sterling to go and train with the kids if he doesn't want to? Like I say, he wanted to fight for his place. Should he be given that opportunity to?
Well, I would argue that he has. He's been given he had a year with Enzo Maresca. Well, I say that he didn't have a year with Enzo Maresca. He had a few games at the start of the season. Enzo Maresca came in very quickly and decided that Raheem Sterling is not the one for me. And he also had a year of pretty poor performances, or at least very subpar for the money he was making on the back of it. And then he goes to Arsenal and gets his chance to redeem himself. He famously said, "This is where you're going to see the best of me," and he didn't score one goal. I don't know. He scored one goal against Bolton, actually?
Yep. Yeah, he scored against us, yeah.
Yeah. So I would argue that he's kind of had his chance. He went away to a big club, not a small, a team that was challenging for a title. You could argue that he actually failed upwards and got a move to a better club in a better position. And he didn't do anything. He failed to make an impact. So,
okay, fair enough.
I think it's fair in the sense of he had his chance and he didn't really take it. So as long as he's getting his paycheck on time, I don't think Chelsea have to be that guilty about excluding him.
Well, we'll get to that later because we can talk about what constitutes fair working environment because there is sort of guideline around this, I believe. But we'll come back to that later with the PFA. But I just wanted to ask Scott, are you the only club doing this in the Premier League now, would you say?
Well, interesting. I think this is happening pretty much everywhere where there's a player who isn't wanted. And whether it gets the same column inches and clicks as a club like Chelsea might, who are very easy to write a story about and always have been, is a different story. I mean, you've only got to look just over the road from me at Old Trafford. A player who's just joined Chelsea from another bomb squad in Alejandro Garnacho. So you look at Manchester United, who have had several players, the likes of Anthony, Rasmus Højlund, and Garnacho, who, at one point deemed the new youth future of the club. As soon as Ruben Amorim decided, let's use Garnacho as an example, as soon as he decided he was surplus, he wasn't training, he was told in front of his entire team to find a new club. He was excluded. Jadon Sancho was another one, wasn't allowed in the facilities, wasn't allowed at the training ground until there'd been some sort of like showdown talk with Eric Ten Hag. So it happens all around the league. Whether I think you've almost got a different structure. At Man United, you've maybe got individual fallouts for various different reasons, and they're then getting excluded. And at Chelsea, we're almost taking a batch of players in one and saying, you lot aren't good enough anymore. We're going to find new homes for you, basically. So I think it's happening everywhere. Whether it's, I think there's just.
Here's a question. Something I was thinking on. I was thinking on this today when we decided we were going to do this topic, and I wondered because I agree. I think Man United have a bomb squad. I think other clubs have had them as well, but I think it is something that City have had it with.
Yep.
I think Grealish was pretty much bomb squadded this summer, as was McAtee.
Joao Cancelo at one point, he was basically told, find somewhere to go because we don't.
Yeah, Nunes as well, bomb squadded.
Yeah.
Even to a degree, Edison, bomb squadded. So it's a bit.
Trying to shift Edison for about 2 or 3 years by the sounds of it.
Now, here's my question though. These clubs have a lot in common. These are your big six. So is this basically a privilege of the big six because of the revenue they're able to put through PSR means that other clubs don't have necessarily this same privilege and they are more wedded to their transfers and feel more obliged to give them a go even if they don't seem to be working?
Yeah, there is probably an element of that. I mean, you could argue that at these bigger clubs, the stakes are higher. Like Raheem, let's look at Raheem Sterling. Fairly big transfer fee, probably not bad for the circumstances and the play that we thought we were going to get. But if you win with Raheem Sterling, you win big based on his reputation. But if you lose, you also lose big because he's, £1.5 million a month he's costing the club for 5 years. So the stakes are higher if these things go wrong. And also, I think the clubs at the upper reaches of the Premier League, they've almost got a bit more cachet to say that. Like more people want to play for a Chelsea or a Man United or a Liverpool than they would a Palace or a Brentford or a Fulham. So they can almost swing their dick around effectively, for lack of a better term, and be like, we're the club, we're the draw here. We're going to decide what happens. Whereas in other clubs, if you've got almost a bigger fish in a smaller pond, maybe the dynamic's a little bit different. So yeah, I think there is probably a skew for those bigger clubs. And maybe it just gets more attention at those clubs because, they're the clubs that generate the clicks that pay the bills.
Well, that was going to be my next question in terms of attention. I've got a couple theories on this myself, but I'm wondering, why do you think this is such a big deal now?
Being brutally honest, I think it's just because it's a story that can be ran. I don't necessarily think it is a bigger problem than it's ever been before. I don't think it's a new issue that has come to light that we need to take care of. I think because there was a situation at Chelsea where you could create a narrative around this. And then when you start scratching beneath the surface and you see similar situations around other clubs like Man United, like Man City, you then start to have, this is now a new thing that you could probably run a bomb squad story every summer for forever on a thing that's already been happening, but you've just now came up with a fancy new name and stuck it on it. I think it's simply just got more attention because it can, and you can sensationalize it a lot. You can start bringing in like player welfare and failed transfers, and everyone loves a failed transfer story because it's column inches again. So I don't know what you think. I don't know if there's anything. I don't know if I'm maybe being a bit too cynical here, but I can't think of any other good reason why it's getting so much more focus other than.
I have a theory on it. It is a theory, but I wonder whether the fact that a lot of what I could consider to be luxury England players and all of a sudden now more increasingly being put into this bracket, players that were having very strong careers. And so people like Marcus Rashford, who's now flying. My boy Marcus. Got my Marcus Rashford shirt on. But a player flying now at Barcelona. Calvin Phillips really suffered at this with Man City. Like almost to the point where it's broke him, I would say, in terms of confidence. So I'm not going to blame City for that, but I think that doesn't help. I think you look at Raheem, who's, bless him, got quite a few mentions today. Ben Chilwell.
Yeah.
These are quite prominent England players involved in it. Do you think that brings another emotive element to it, particularly maybe with Marcus Rashford? I would say that's a real big one.
The saviour of children all over the Northwest. I think it's when you start putting him in the bomb squad and excluding him from stuff. It's, and these players, I think there's also an element of these players also have their own resources and their own PR teams and their own people who will spin this to put their client in the most sympathetic light. So on that angle, are you insinuating that because these are English players, the spotlight is heavier on their treatment as opposed to if it was, well, we can.
Yeah, Yeah, in a word, yeah. I absolutely think that, yeah. And I think particularly with Rashford. It's a very full circle moment when you look at Marcus Rashford. Because I remember episode 1, Fixing Football Podcast. Terrible if you ever go back and listen to it. But Luke Foley saying that teams must have a homegrown player in their starting 11. It must be that was his first fix. Terrible idea. But he basically pinned it on the idea of Marcus Rashford was Mr. Man United at that time.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, he can never play for this club again. And I think those people, if you listen to United fans talk about Rashford, they talk about a player that has completely, gone off and he's been distracted and X, Y, Z and been seen in at basketball games instead of training, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about PR machines, do you think clubs are almost started briefing against these players? Do you think that as well is, and some maybe section of the media, I look at people like Henry Winter, who talks quite a lot about this kind of subject. Sort of, now he's not necessarily associated with a newspaper, he's turning around and going, no, I think the clubs are treating him badly. Do you think that's because he has a little bit of insight into this, maybe?
Probably. And I do think there is going to be an element of like a PR battle going on. There's a quote that I really like from one Vincent McMahon of WWE fame. And it's
okay.
And it's very short and sweet, and he may not have made it up, but he said a lot that perception is reality. And whoever controls that narrative is typically the one who comes out smelling of roses. So if you're a club and you've got a player spinning poor me, I'm banned from all of these facilities, I'm not being allowed to train, I'm not doing this. The idea from the club is they want to control that into, much like we tried to do, and I think we saw this with Sterling. We then basically took the initiative to say, actually, Raheem Sterling had 3 or 4 solid offers to leave, and he opted to stay. So that's where you then start to see the sympathy start to shift of, okay, he's had offers, but he didn't take them. Is the money then the most important thing? Which, spoiler, yes, it was. But I think that there's certainly that PR battle that goes on between players and clubs, particularly those high-profile ones that you talk about. Rashford's image is so crucial to everything that goes on with him. So that will 100% be going on. Okay,
well, I don't want to quote too much Vince McMahon because I'm not up to WWE as much as you, Scott, but I believe he is currently super cancelled.
Yeah. The less we touch on him, the better, I think.
Yeah, exactly. However, I don't disagree with that. I think that's something you learn as you get older, that if everyone believes something, that is the truth. Because that is what they'll act based on. So that is quite interesting. But we talk about the treatment, Scott, which takes to my next question on this, really. Your mates, the PFA. The PFA must condemn. They must get involved. Are they right to get involved now?
Well, the PFA have to justify their own existence to a degree, don't they? If the PFA...
that is so Simon Jordan, it's untrue. But go on.
Well, it's true, though, isn't it? Because if the PFA aren't going to get involved in a situation like this where a player's welfare is at least questioned, then there is no point in them existing. That is the whole purpose for that organisation, is to be on the side of the players in an adverse situation. So I feel like if they don't get involved, I then would question what is the point in them being a thing anyway. I think if they have reason to believe that a player is being mistreated, it would be weird if they weren't getting involved. And I guess it depends on the extent to which they get involved. Is it just their job to send a customary boilerplate email to say, please can you make sure that Raheem has access to all of these facilities, changing, training equipment, whatever it may be? Or is it a case that Raheem Sterling's union rep effectively is marching down to Cobham and kicking the door in and asking for, a meeting with the higher ups? I don't know if we know enough about the ins and outs of that, but I think if the PFA don't stick their nose in, I don't know what you think about the PFA, but I find them a bit toothless and a bit useless, and I don't understand what they do exactly. And
they do a lot, but it's not often reported. And I think they're very busy at the moment with the new interpretations of the transfer, which is maybe another podcast we'll do another day. But there's been a lot of thinking about what constitutes a transfer and when players can leave a contract and stuff. They're very busy with that. But in terms of the PFA, I do agree with you. If they're not getting involved in this, then what's the point? Like, I do agree. I think where I disagree a little bit is I think they have a right to get involved. I think it's quite an interesting one. My understanding is, and again, it's my understanding. If it's wrong, feel free to correct me. And not that everyone ever does that, but feel free to, if you're listening, go, I think Liam's wrong there. But my understanding is that for him to fulfill his work duties, we'll use a different player, Disasi. I feel like Sterling's getting picked on here. So we'll use Axel Disasi, right? As long as he can go to training and is available for selection if needed, that constitutes, for both sides' perspective, fair treatment. And I think this is where it gets a bit sketchy for me, because if Axel Disasi, is it Axel Disasi? Yeah. If Disasi, in the normal world, if my work said to me, Liam, you're shit, stop ringing people, we'll pay you to the end of your contract, but we don't want you to ring it, we don't want you to just sit there all day. Now, that might sound fun at first, but after a bit, I'd be a bit like, I could probably do better somewhere else here, maybe enhance my career and potentially what I could earn elsewhere. And I could potentially leave them.
Yeah.
But because of the transfer windows, Axel Disasi can't do that. He has to sort of go and train with the kids. Maybe not involved in not allowed in the same change rooms, I don't think, at Chelsea.
No.
Don't let Enzo Maresca's dad hear that. He was in fishing for 9 days straight with no sleep and only lived off the fucking sea itself. So, he never complained. So, do you think that's fair that he can't change? And do you think football has a problem here with this sort of situation, Scott?
No, I don't. And I may get accused of bias here, but I mean, and that's a question for you as well, as a non-Chelsea person. Maybe your lens on this is better before I answer that fully. That quote from Maresca about basically saying, these guys ain't got it that tough. The fucking multimillionaires, they'll be okay. Like, no one needs to shed a tear for them. Do you agree with that notion? And do you, I guess another part to that, do you agree that if that had come from another voice, we'd have had a different response to that?
Oh, good question. Do I agree with the notion? No. I think everyone, despite earnings, human rights matter. Regardless of earnings, both ways, right? So do I agree with the notion? No. However, football is different. It lives in a different vacuum. So I think you have to get on with it. And I think for football to work, there has to be transfers. There has to be money going up and down the pyramid. And unfortunately, there is a problem with that. I think there are ways around it, and we'll maybe look at fixes and solutions after this. The second part of your question, do I think that would have been different if it come out of someone else's mouth? Yeah, probably. I don't think Maresca has that. He's not nailed the sort of charismatic, cheeky manager comment thing yet. Maybe that'll come with time. If Pep said that, I think it wouldn't have been a big deal. And it would have been, he'd have said it with that cheeky smile at the end, and the room starts laughing even though it's not funny.
I can just imagine if Klopp had said it and just, oh my God, what a refreshing take. It'd have been insufferable. It'd have been a horrible
game. But I also think as well, if Arteta said it, it'd have been worse.
yeah.
Because he's such an insufferable guy that everyone had just turned on him instantly.
Yeah.
So I think that's Maresca's issue. You've got to manage your own personal brand. I don't think that's not our fault as the consumer for how he portrays himself. He needs to go and fix that. That's how it works in the real world, right? You're going to be an effective communicator. But so I suppose to answer your question, I agree. I think they need to get on with it. I think it's unsavoury, and I think it's just one of those things in life that isn't fair. And I do acknowledge that, and I think it is a bit shit. But winter is coming. It'll soon be the January transfer window, and you do have an element of control in the situation yourself. You can make the move. There will be clubs interested in both Raheem Sterling and Axel Disasi. The question is, do they want to earn the money that they are at Chelsea currently, or potentially take a hit? Because Chelsea probably want them off the books completely, I imagine, particularly with Sterling.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, like you said, football does live in its own vacuum. And I think if we're going to accept the good parts of that vacuum, that, there's infinite amounts of money that just get thrown around and it then creates an amazing Premier League that we all love to watch, we then also have to accept that within this vacuum, some things that may be deemed really harsh in the real world, you can't really treat them the same here because I do think there's a large element of it. The money involved is so astronomical. You can't. The sympathy does have to be limited, in my opinion, because it isn't the same as someone on 30 grand a year getting deprived of working in a new environment. It's someone who's making millions a month to do nothing. So I do think you need to have that. You need to look at it through the football lens as well. So I think we agree.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So, is there a workaround here, Scott? Because let's say Disassi sat there doing nothing. We're currently at the end of September, so he's got a good 3 months of under 21 football or under 23 football. As far as I can see, the window's now shut in Saudi and Turkey, I think.
Yeah.
I think it is. There's no option. What is there a workaround? Is there a fix here that you could do in that situation?
I think there's a possible workaround, but again, it's so difficult because if what we're told is true, both of those players had options. They could have fixed this situation. And I'd argue this is kind of what they're.
What was Disassi's option?
I think a return to Monaco was an option. But
okay, okay.
I don't know the terms of the deal and how that would have been structured, but it was there. If he wanted, and I think this is where he starts.
I imagine it's structured very nicely in Monaco with
Monaco's favour. Yeah,
yeah, the fucking tax haven that is, and not a horrible place to be either. Not
I don't know why it doesn't attract even more top players, given all of that, like no tax and it's one of the most wealthy places in the world. I've always wondered why they never got more top players.
Because players aren't money motivated, Scott. We talked about this before.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they don't like the money. Dirty money.
But go on.
But yeah, I think a fix could be in theory. So yeah, if you're presented with a solution to leave and then you say no, tough shit, in my opinion. However, I think if you're there in a situation where, let's say, could you have a world where Chelsea Football Club sign a contract between the PFA and Axel Disasi, let's just use this as an example, to say Chelsea Football Club, we confirm we have no plans and will not use this player until X date. Maybe it's the end of his contract or whatever. So if you have an agreement between a body, the player, and the club, that player is surplus to requirements and under no circumstances whatsoever is he going to get back in the team. Could you then circumvent the transfer window to say for a club who has the means to give this player an out within a reasonable financial framework for all involved, can we allow some out-of-window deals to avoid players rotting effectively? Although rotting in paradise, but rotting nonetheless.
Problem with that, as much as I get where you're going, and I might be able to nuance it slightly with a suggestion, but the problem you've got with that is the integrity element. Because let's say, for example, it happened with 10 games to go in the season, and you see that, let's say, I don't know, a Fulham type has, let's say, Newcastle, Villa, these types of clubs in their running, and all of a sudden they have a defender gets injured and a right winger gets injured, and you're like, oh, actually,
yeah,
because that is ultimately why the window exists anyway, for that exact purpose of this idea of, we've got a cup final, but let's say Everton in a cup final and I don't know, Biblin and whoever the other right winger is, I think they didn't have one actually, get injured, and it's like, well, we could do a cup final winger, and is that a problem?
Yes, I think it would be. I think you would certainly need to cap it of this can't be in perpetuity. You can do this at any point during the season for something like that to work. You'd almost have to say this has to be resolved before the season begins. But having said that, then it defeats the whole object because then it's in the window. So yeah, I think that does pose a big issue because they could basically loan him for a game if he scores the winner in the cup final and then comes back to Chelsea. Like that's weird, but I don't know. I'm not sure. That's the only way I can think of getting these poor footballers out playing, doing the thing that they love, and the club's not having to foot the bill for them.
Okay.
Everyone kind of wins in that scenario, but I don't. But you're right, there is an integrity issue there, so maybe we need to expand on it.
Well, here's my two solutions. Number one, I absolutely despise, but I think it's a good case for it because I look at what happened with Ben Chilwell, and it is a case for the multi-club ownership. This idea that you can potentially move them around. Strasbourg is a good place to live. It's a very good loan for Ben Chilwell. He's still going to be sat there on £200,000 a week playing in Ligue 1. He's going to be he's going to be like Marcelo in that division. Like it's a good loan. It's a good loan for him, right? So, and that you'll see that happen, I think, across the board. And I think a lot of the players will look at their American clubs for that kind of reason. So I think that's number one. Number two, and I think this is maybe a bit more of a goer, but it would be quite hard to implement, is I don't understand why a transfer window exists when it's clubs in different organisational bodies. So, for example, a UEFA club and a CONMEBOL club. So I don't see why, if you're not part of the same ownership group, for example, you couldn't loan players out across different continents at any point in the season. So, for example, I think, Sterling, if you offered him an MLS loan now, I think he'd consider that.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference here between going to the MLS and going to Saudi Arabia. Because going to Saudi Arabia is a complete way of life change. You're going to be living there for at least 2 years if you want the full benefit of the finances, benefit of that move, right? Mm-hmm. That's a complete it's a complete change to your lifestyle, your family, X, Y, Z. USA, not so much.
Yeah. So basically a paid holiday in Los Angeles for a year or whatever it is. It's not that bad, is it?
So I think that potentially is an option here.
Yeah.
I can't see in it. Yeah.
I like it.
I'm not sure about the second half of the season, though. I feel like that might still cause integrity issues, potentially. But it feels a better solution than most.
Yeah, you'd almost have to say, right, we've got... Then you could just extend the transfer window and just... If you said, like, okay, you've got a 6-week period from when the window closes to do it under these particular circumstances or what have you. But I agree it's messy. I think ideally clubs just get these signings right in the first place, but it's wishful thinking.
No one... Yeah, the fix is no one makes a mistake. Ever.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I think we've covered everything there, Scott. So, brilliant. So that is Bomb Squad sorted. So we're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll talk about some of the football that happened this weekend. Hello, welcome back to your back-to-back award-nominated podcast, the Fixing Football Podcast. Please get your nominations and votes in for us, please. We are heading there, Scott, Ellen Road. Dirty Leeds.
Horrible.
And we'll be there, big night out, hobnobbing with the who's who of football virgins. So we'll be having the night of our lives. Please vote for us. That is Best Podcast International. Please vote. We're up against some pretty big hitters. So, yeah, every vote counts. Thank you, guys. So, Scott, talked a lot about Chelsea on this pod. So, why don't we talk a little bit more? And
why not?
The train is stopping. The world champions having some disciplinary issues. And I thought this was ended now. Nicholas Jackson had been booted out.
Yeah.
Bombed out of the squad, if you will. What's going on?
Right. So we've had yet another defeat, which is another combination of self-inflicted disciplinary issues, a lack of intensity overall, and poor in-game management from the gaffer. We've had another symphony of issues and errors go on. And I think we've just come off we're just in a really horrible, and it's a small slump. I'm going to put an asterisk next to it. I don't think it's full crisis mode. We're just in a little bit of a bad spot. We've had some bad luck with injuries. We're missing any club who misses their best player is going to suffer a little bit, and any club who misses their best centre half is going to suffer a little bit. So we're missing some of the key players that make this squad tick when we're firing. But we do seem to be in a little bit of muck and mire that we're struggling to get out of, and I think we had a bit of. It's weird because the first 25 minutes ish, half an hour of the Brighton game was exactly what everyone was looking for. A good response, slick football. We looked really good. And as soon as we scored, we just stopped doing all of that. All the good stuff that we just done. We just, we'll just chill now. And towards the end of that half, it was looking a bit testy. And then another issue with having a young team, you get mistakes. And we had another one with Andre Santos. And then Trevor Chalobah took his man out. And again, I could argue, could you just let him try and go on? Back your keeper. And it was, and it's just compounding. We've had 3 defeats on the spin now. And there's a lot of questions being asked of Enzo Maresca, which is not good news.
If you're Trevor Chalobah, Scott, are you letting someone run on to Robert Sanchez?
Funnily enough, that's the one thing I would trust him with is a one-on-one shot-saving situation, because that's where he's proved.
Fair enough.
That's kind of where he's earned his spot. It's more if he's got the ball at his feet and he's looking for a pass, that's where your nerves are going to kick in. But yeah, and even go one down. You're the better team. You've got 40 minutes to fix it.
Well, I was going to ask this, Scott. So obviously with 2 defeats in a row, Man United and Brighton, do you win both those games with 11 men?
Yes. I would also argue that with the right dugout decisions, we win them with 10 as well.
Give us an example. You don't need to go into them in too much detail, but maybe give us an example where you think Maresca's dropped the ball a little bit.
I'll use the Brighton game because that's the most recent, and I went on a fucking rant about Maresca's decisions in the United game last week, so I won't subject everyone to that.
Thank you.
So in the Brighton game, Chalobah goes off, so he brings Andre Santos off and brings on Joshua Champong. Fine. Centre half comes in to replace the one that's gone. That's cool. And the most dangerous player for us looked like Estevao the whole game through. He showed his inexperience a few times, but overall he was the outlet. And then he brings off Estevao for Malagusto. When you've got Garnacho and Gittins sitting on the bench, dicks in hand, not doing anything. And I think
just sitting there. Might not have the dicks in their hand. But anyway,
might not have done. Yeah, the jury's out on that. But I think that's 2 things. One, that the message that's sending to your players and to Brighton's players that Chelsea is sort of, and we were 1-0 up at this point. Chelsea are kind of playing for that. We're going to set up shop. We're going to be hard to break down. You try and beat us effectively. And we're not that good defensively to do that. We don't have Thiago Silva and Antonio Rudiger anymore. And by inviting all that pressure, on a long enough period of time, you are going to concede a goal. And that is exactly what happened. I think another highlight on that one change, there was a period where Enzo Fernandez wins the ball in midfield, plays a through ball, and Malagusto he's not through on goal because he's just past the halfway line, but there is no one in front of him. Brighton have just been on the attack. And his only competition is Van Heck, who isn't known to be a speed merchant. And all Malagusto has to do is run in a fucking straight line. Just run forward. Neto's on the other wing. And if you just keep going, you can either have a go yourself or square it. We would then have gone 2-0 up with 15 minutes to play. Albeit down to 10 men, but we'd be winning the game by a decent margin. And it's like, you've taken off an attacking player for a defensive one. And instead, what he does, instead of running in the straight line, he does a little Ronaldo chop backwards and plays it back to Enzo Fernandez, killing the attack, and then it's 6v2 in Brighton's favour. So it's like, you're not telling me if Garnacho doesn't pick the ball up in that spot, or Gittins or Estevao, they're not just going fucking that way, straight towards the net. And it's just decisions like that where you think, you've shat yourself again. You've just panicked and decided to go too defensive when you need that threat. And second time in space of a week, he's done that.
Okay, fair enough. One word answer. Should Enzo Maresca be sacked or not?
No.
Okay. And usually you wouldn't ask a fan base that question just after the first 2 defeats after winning a World Cup, but you are Chelsea after all.
Yeah. Got to
perfect. Well, I'd like to say things are much better at Bolton, Scott, but we've we've had the euphoria of a 4-1 home derby day win against Wigan. Pathetic. A great win, followed up by what is becoming a real Achilles heel, which is a poor away performance.
Horrible.
Really bad. Really bad. And a few things that have concerned me a little bit. I do think we're onto something with Steven Schumacher. I think he's a good manager, and I like the football that we play. It's wing play. Everyone likes wing play. It's really pleasing the eye. We've got some really good attacking players. My issue is he does seem to tinker a little bit.
Is this with the 11 or the system itself?
The 11.
Right.
The 11. He, for me, it's quite inexplicably brought Josh Sheehan back into the squad. And the only reason I can think of is purely to rotate and keep things fresh and keep people happy. And I really don't think you should be changing a team after winning 4-1 in a derby. Yeah,
totally.
When you've got a week's worth of rest. So we've not won away yet this season. We were unbeaten in 11 games. But this way you can hide anything in stats. I don't think that was a fair reflection on our away form. I think our away form looks poor. I don't think we look great at all away. We're not. I think we win most home games any season in League One. That's absolutely a given. The difference between us going up and not going up is how we perform away from home, and he's not cracked that yet. So we've got two games coming up now against two of the worst teams in the league, Peterborough and Burton, and it needs to be 6 points. It's already getting to the point where we need. It is early days, and no one's running away with League One. And if you ask me what I still think we go up. But we need to get this away form sorted sharpish to not make sure we're not leaving ourselves too much during the second half of the season.
Yeah. When you're going away from home, is it a case that you think he's just a bit too cagey and he's not backing his team to just go out and kill the game? Or what do you think it is that's causing that drop-off?
Good question. We seem to snatch at chances a lot more away from home. And we don't seem to... And I think we don't create the same quality of chances. And I couldn't really tell you why that is, to be honest. It just seems like we'll get the ball out wide and we'll maybe take a shot rather than work inside like we would do at home. And it seems as though teams are more likely to have a go at us. And I think we do have some issues defensively. I think Teddy Sharman Lowe, the goalkeeper, who I praised during the season for how good he is with his feet, hasn't had the best season so far, I would say. Quite a few chances of squirmed in. If I say that, you'll kind of know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And I think, exactly. And I think our defence, which was something I did worry about start of the season, I think particularly at right back, and we've not fallen on a full centre-back partnership either, we can leak goals at any time. And I just think, because teams are a bit more braver against us at their gaff, then we are conceding goals. So, I think it's a mixture of things, Scott. I think it's a mixture.
One final question. And I know you were a vocal critic, but do you think you're missing Ricardo Santos?
No.
No. Interesting.
No.
So the problems are in spite of his leaving, not because of Bob.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of these games that we drew in this bad way run, we lose with Ricardo Santos. Because I think Ricardo Santos and Chris Farino are now operating the same spot. I would say Chris Farino's been our best defender this season, in my view. And that is not saying a lot, though. Like, I'm not... you know what I mean? I'm not saying he's coming in, he's an absolute rock at the back for us, but I would say that, he's been better than I expect Santos would be. No, I'm very much still glad. Although he's not really had a look in with his injuries at all, Ricardo Santos. But we'll move on. Yeah. Here's one for you, Scott.
Ooh, go on.
Is Ruben Amorim the worst manager in the Premier League?
Well, no, Graham Potter's been sacked. I think there's a very strong argument that he is. I do find it staggering that he seems to have stumbled upon a situation where he can be, and football's not, is quite known for this, that he can be notoriously terrible, both in the moment and historically at his job, and seemingly be under zero pressure whatsoever from his own employer. I find it staggering.
He's on it. It's madness. The lack of pressure on him from both his employer and their fans. Yeah. When I was hearing that song again at the weekend, and I was just like, "What is wrong with you?" Don't get me wrong. I understand the position of there's been bad strategic decisions being made from the pit. I get all that, and there's very much merit in that argument. But you cannot honestly say that someone this wedded to a system that meant that Mason Mount was playing left wing back at the weekend. You cannot surely tell me that he's doing himself any favours or he's trying to win the football match that's in front of him.
No. The only logical answer is that he knows there's a juicy payout if he keeps getting this wrong. And he's just playing for that. If I knew there was 12 million quid, as long as I just kept failing at my job, that wouldn't be very difficult for me to do and not be tempting either. So I like to think he's got more integrity than that, but that's life-changing money for Ruben Amorim. Is he just now thinking, you know what, this is a lost cause. I can't do this anymore anyway, so I may as well just tank it. I did read actually today that, I don't know how true it is, but apparently his release clause to pay him off drops from about 12 million to 4 million if he gets sacked in November. I don't know what significance November has. Might be the month he joined.
Anniversary. Yeah, that sounds like an anniversary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was about this. It was about that time last year, wasn't it, that he came in just before Christmas? So,
well, actually, by United standards, that's quite well negotiated because usually it'd be about 50 million with knowing them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you get a pay rise.
Yeah, exactly. Ten Hag usually got a new contract under similar circumstances, so they've actually done quite well if that's true.
And the only if it's not the money and it's not the payout that sort of keep. The only thing that I can think of that's keeping this all going is that United have just made an internal decision to stick instead of twist and think, you know what, we've thrown 300 million quid of his players at this. We kind of have to see it out, just because we're too far in.
I was going to ask this question. Now, the problem is, because of the information you've just given us there, if that's true, it almost prejudices this question massively. So let's pretend that we didn't hear about this November bonus, because that just answers all the fucking questions, to be honest. So let's pretend we didn't hear that, everyone. Is there a world where they're keeping him in a position because of the concern of how Ineos looks off the back of Ten Hag's new contract, Ruben Amorim, and Dan Ashworth? That's a lot of mistakes from a organisation that puts strategic decision making as the forefront of what they are world leading at. And does that bring it into question, their decision making?
I think it has to. Because if you view, let's pretend Man United aren't a football club for a second. If this is any other large organisation, if you saw this much turnover at the board level, at exec level, that spells that something is horribly wrong. If you have a CFO or a COO or whatever it may be, coming and going every 6 months or so, it usually means there's something not good at the top, whatever it may be. And that would send warning signs to the stock market, which unfortunately for Man United, they're also on.
That's a good point. Let me add another layer to this though. On something we said in the first half of the podcast, that football, we agree, both of us, that football operates in a vacuum. It's not the real world.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
It's almost like a soap opera, like wrestling. Right? Your favourite. So it operates in this weird vacuum. Is there a world where, yes, sacking someone you just put into that job 10 months ago would look bad in the real world, but do you look worse for keeping him in it? In the football world? Because I would argue that if they're watching this thinking that it's working, that again, to answer it further, I listened to Karen Brady's interview with Henry Winter and Sean Custis maybe a month and a half ago about Potter, where she had his back completely. Obviously, since that, it continued to hemorrhage that situation. And they've made a big decision over the weekend. I would say that was decisive. And I think it was the right thing to do. But obviously, they got Potter wrong now. They have to live with that. Yeah. So what, I suppose coming back to the question, I've gone round the houses with this. Is it even worse to keep him in?
Yeah. I think it's an important layer to add, though, because like you said, in the real world, you're almost better off keeping him in the post for at least a year. And then you can say we gave it some time, whatever, it didn't work. But yeah, in the weird and wonderful football world, you won't be praised for allowing losses to continue. you will be much more praised for being decisive and thinking, fuck it, cut our losses.
Well,
let's try and move on to the next thing.
Well, for what it's worth, I hope it continues forever.
I do as well.
So, Scott, usually we do any other business now, but I wanted to sort of end by, it'd be wrong of us when Martin's not here to talk about what is being decided as a monumental moment already, which I must admit, I still remember that it's September when we're recording this. So I'm not sure I fully subscribe to that, but what a win for the Arsenal, Scott.
A big win for the Arsenal. Does Martin like us talking about Arsenal or not? I struggle to keep up with that.
No. In my experience, no. But I feel like we've started well, so he might...
he might let this one slide.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. A big win for the Arsenal. And while I agree with you, it's very early days to call this some sort of like title-defining result. It was a big statement win from Arsenal. And typically in the circumstances, 1-0 down at St. James's with 15, 20 minutes to play. Historically, they will probably not win that game. And this is the kind of game that, I hate that fucking trope, that thing that people say, oh, this is the kind of game that champions win. And I hate that, but it's also true. And maybe I hate it because it's true. So yeah, I think that going away,
winning most games is what champions tend to do. But yeah, I suppose this isn't football cliches. There's already a podcast for that. But go on, yeah, you're right. Go on.
Yeah. So I think that coming back to win at St. James's Park is massive, and I think these are the kind of games that they probably would have drawn last year, and they're finding ways to get it done despite almost being shafted by what everyone thought was a extremely clear red card and penalty, but was since proven right by the rule book, as we saw.
Yeah, I was quite emphatic in thinking that was a red. Yeah, and then even when I watched it again, it was red. And then I've seen it back with an explanation of pretty much as the interpretation of the Premier League in the rules is that if the keeper gets a touch on it, that second touch doesn't matter. Got to admit, I still think it's a penalty on vibes.
Yeah.
But the rules are the rules. So I kind of get it now. And, you know, if Jared Gillett ever read our WhatsApp messages, I apologise. You got it right. Fair play. And I think even like Nick Pope was surprised that didn't get given. I think he was getting it.
Yeah,
I think he was trying to get his toe back off Martinelli, thinking that he's getting sent off. So, it looks like it wasn't a penalty. But it doesn't matter in the end because Arsenal won anyway.
Big win for the Arsenal. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because for all the talk of Liverpool, running away with the league, dominated, they won the first 5 games, and fair play, they did that. All it takes is a Chelsea favour on Sunday. I think the Chelsea-Liverpool game is this week, and an Arsenal win, and Arsenal are on top.
Yeah, and probably had a suffer start of fixtures that I would say. So I think Arsenal will be pretty pleased with how things are going. Here's a question though, before we sort of wrap up on this game. I feel like I was being gaslighted after into thinking it was a amazing Arsenal performance. I heard Gary Neville talking afterwards, like, oh, they dominated this game from start to finish. They deserve winners. And I was like, don't really remember it.
He's weird about Gary Neville. I don't know what his problem is.
I know exactly what it is. They're not Liverpool or Man City. That's what it is. He's just been eroding his soul for years. He felt like Man City were his friends, but then he'd go there and they'd just be calling him a knobhead and remind him that he's definitely not. So I think they're not United or City. They're not City or Liverpool. Sorry, I think that's basically what it is.
Fair
I heard Adrian Clark as well. I normally was just Arsenal dominated this game. Starts and I feel like I don't remember it being. Yes, they had good chances, and Nick Pope had a very good game, by the way. They rediscovered his arms, as we said in our WhatsApp group, which is handy for him. But yeah, it felt like more turgid and more hard-working than that. It didn't feel like they blew them away, but maybe I'm just being a bitter non-Arsenal fan, Scott, because...
It sounded like the first sort of, 20 minutes, it was like Arsenal were peppering them a little bit, but over the course of the game, I think it started to even out. And then it goes to show, two corners again. That's for all this dominance and all this, Arsenal was so gorgeous and did all this amazing football. No open play goals again.
I don't think anyone's accusing him of that. I think what makes this game, it's very watchable, this game, but I think the reason it's so watchable is that both teams seem to define themselves on this defensive first approach, which means that they both just try and bully each other, I think. Yeah. Quite a lot of diving, though, in this game, I would say. Quite a lot.
It was a bit, I think it was players trying to, and then I saw like Gabriel basically give Waltermar a fucking right hook.
Yeah, it was interesting that, because it was just after the goal, and Waltermar was basically complaining about it, quite clearly. And it was like Sky just wanted to pretend that it wasn't happening. And Waltermar was, for people listening to this, was giving it the old elbow impression, as if say, that fucker's just elbowed me.
Yeah.
And then like Sky was just like, oh, Waltermar seems upset about something. Maybe it's because... And then like... And it was like, well, he's saying he elbowed him. Why don't we look at that? And then just no reference to it whatsoever.
Yeah,
but it
just glossed over it.
Having said that, having seen it since, I think it was just below the red card threshold, but that's classic Gabriel just sort of getting involved and doesn't like that. Someone getting one over him, does he? He gets under his skin like a big... I wonder again, on a different day, would that have been a red card? And then we're sat here talking about Arsenal's disciplinary issues again.
Yeah. The PGMOL are back in the spotlight.
Yeah, those nasty PGMOL targeting Arsenal and the thing. But yeah, no, great win, Arsenal. Well done. Any other matters, Scott? I'll ask that question now. Any other matters?
I think we've covered all of the key points from the weekend. United is still in the mud. Chelsea out far behind. And Arsenal, the title's in their grasp. All they've got to do is not lose ever again.
I'll give you one, Scott. One word answer again. Is Glasner the best manager in the league?
Yeah. Oh. No, I can't say that yet. But he's not far off, is he?
No, fantastic, fantastic manager. Frankfurt won the Europa League, and now he's got Palace in the top four. What's third, I think, when we're recording this, third in the league. Unbelievable. And you consider they've sold Eze, by the way. And Eze was the main man for Arsenal yesterday. Everyone was going through him. He was their best player by a mile. And they've sold him. And they look like they never had him. He just adapted so quickly. Amazing manager.
And the captain is basically on borrowed time. And it doesn't look like he's dropped his performance. But here's something. We did kind of skirt over that amazing Palace win. What did you think of this, of Salah's handball not being deemed a handball in the build-up to their equaliser? I thought that was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought it was on ball.
I couldn't believe what I was watching, but
I think they're almost too nervous about those in the build-up ones. But I'm a big believer that if the ball hits your hand and you score, that's not on. Like that you shouldn't get the goal. And yeah, I get pre-VAR that would happen. It'd be just one of those things. But I think in a world of VAR, if the ball hits you, even if it's accidental, it hits your hand, and either you or the person you pass to goes to score, you shouldn't be allowed that goal.
100%. And we've seen a lot disallowed that were very, very clearly accidental and much less egregious than that.
Well, they struggle with this rule. I think they really struggle with handball because it's not necessarily as clean cut, so it doesn't really... They struggle with a VAR on it, don't they? But yeah, not a great weekend on the old VAR front, but I can't be bothered going into that. I'm sure Martin... we'll have a week off VAR with Martin not being here. So
his dissertation will be ready for next week.
Wonderful. So, thank you, Scott. That was fun.
Anytime, Liam.
Always fun. Please like and subscribe on everything. We are on all the social media / podcast areas that you get them from. Martin's a lot slicker than that than I am. But if you can access all things on the fixingfootballpodcast.com, what I'd say is, if you comment on there, that does us a lot of good. Particularly on the YouTube channel. Please comment. Say something on there. I prefer if it was nice. It doesn't have to be. There's a robot on there that really engages us every week. It's really intelligent. If for no other reason, go and have a look at it. It's weird how good it is. It's definitely a bot. I'm convinced it's a bot.
And if you are not a bot, please join us for an episode so that we can put this debate to bed, because it's been a hot topic in our WhatsApp group for a long time now.
Yeah. One of the people of the podcast that isn't here, who usually is here, don't want to name names, is convinced that this is a real person, even though Scott and I, who I think might wouldn't like to admit, I think we're more tech. We're more tech minded. I know he's good at tech, but we are the tech people, I think.
100%.
Yeah. I'm glad you agree with that. We know it's a bot, but feel free to come and debate this with us, whether this is a real thing. We'll put a podcast to it. Is this person talking to us a real person? But anyway, thank you for listening. Scott, say bye.
Goodbye, Liam. I'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.